During the Switch generation, a big problem with multi-platform games being released on Switch was the cost of the cartridges themselves. These were proprietary cartridges, and people had, publishers had to pay for them, and that ate into the profit that their game would make, so they often had to compensate by raising their prices. So during the Switch 2 generation, Nintendo wanted to try to help them out a little bit by introducing the Game Key card. It's a way for publishers to release a game physically without actually having to buy an expensive card, basically just buying an empty card with a code on it. Naturally, people did not really like this. It's sort of understandable from Nintendo's perspective, because obviously they didn't want to use discs in this thing, so they wanted to use cartridges, but again, proprietary media, costs more money, yada yada. But see, then there's been this rumor that a lot of this problem is kind of Nintendo's own doing. The idea has been that publishers have only had the option to purchase one humongous 64 gigabyte cartridge for their games with no other options. So basically only the most expensive ones. So if you were trying to physically publish a very small game, let's say it was only 5 gigabytes or something, you were forced to buy the 64 gigabyte card, and that was of course going to eat really, really significantly into your profits. Again, this is still technically just a rumor. It has not been confirmed anywhere, which is weird, which is surprising. There have been plenty of claims, and it has been corroborated by multiple sources, so it very much could be true. I have to imagine that at this point, it's still just there just still aren't that many Switch 2 dev kits out in the wild. Most of the people, the publishers, developers, and whatnot, who have them are bigger publishers, and maybe they've even signed NDAs, or otherwise they're just, they're not going to go around blabbing about this stuff. And anyone on the smaller side, they may be just releasing their game digitally anyway, so they may not be privy to that information either. I really don't know, and it's hard because if it is true, then of course that absolutely does stink. Of course it does. That really is Nintendo making the problem a whole lot worse. But also it's kind of why would that be the case? Why would they only offer the one option? And of course, there could be something about all this that we just don't know. It could be that they had some problem with production and they only had time to produce. Well, I really don't know anything about this stuff, and yet I don't understand why that would be the case. It seems very strange. It could just be that they had to start somewhere, and from there they thought down the line, as more people are publishing more games physically, then we'll fix it. We'll make it better. We'll introduce more options. I really don't know. We have absolutely no idea what Nintendo's thinking has been here. But the latest rumor is that they are finally going to start introducing smaller options for these cards. And again, this is something that multiple sources have corroborated. The claim is that Nintendo is going to be offering 16 gigabyte and 32 gigabyte cartridges for publishers to use. And naturally that's that would be a big help. That really would be a great improvement. 64. That is rather high across the board. Because again, some games, they're not super duper huge, especially when you're talking indie games. And they still want to put out a physical edition. They may want to still put out a physical edition for Switch 2 specifically. But yeah, 64, it's not doable. 16 though, there you go. That's not bad. If this is true, nobody is exactly sure when it will happen, precisely when Nintendo will start rolling this out. And we have seen shortages of kind of everything across the whole entire tech sphere, so that could impact things as well. And we still don't necessarily know how this, if it is true, could impact things moving forward. There could be plenty of publishers who, just because they have the option to do a game key card, just because Nintendo introduced this idea in the first place, they may want to just do that across the board because it'll just save them money. Some enthusiasts will complain, and rightly so, of course. Like, if you're a physical collector, like, I totally understand the frustration of, like, not even having the game on the card itself. No, it does kind of stink. But if that ends up being a small enough percentage of the game-playing population, then yeah, you may have some publishers who are just like, nah, forget it. Like, they're all going to be game key card releases, which is, of course, one reason why it was no fun that Nintendo introduced this in the first place. It was kind of understandable. It was sort of addressing a problem, but potentially it just created an even bigger problem. So we'll see if it ends up being true, and we'll see if it ends up doing anything. But I want to be hopeful. I want to be hopeful that there will be plenty of publishers who will, oh, good, now I can buy a smaller card. You know, I don't know what the prices are. I don't know, like, what the difference in price will be between a 16 gigabyte card and a 64 gigabyte card. I would want it to be a great difference, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. You're still talking about manufacturing this proprietary media. And even if you just look at you just look at like SD cards and hard drives and stuff, generally speaking, you get more bang for your buck the higher that number is. If it's one price for a 16 gigabyte SD card, it's not that much more for a 32 gigabyte. And if you go up to 64 gigs, then you're getting even more bang for your buck. Like, generally, you get a diminishing returns the further down you go. So it would be pretty unfortunate if this didn't actually save that much money. And you know, it could be that that's the case, and it could be that's why Nintendo didn't do these different sizes in the first place. It could be that just like, you know, not even just greed. Like, if they're just like, we're manufacturing these cards, and if the difference between a 16 and a 64 is a couple bucks, then forget it. We'll just manufacture a bunch of 64s and only sell 64s and make it a little bit easier for everyone. Maybe they're just finally giving us the different sizes just so they can say that they did, so it doesn't feel as much like this is a problem of their own creation. I don't know, speculating way too much. I know almost nothing about any of this, but we can certainly hope, again, at least for like smaller games. You know, it's one thing if you've got these big AAA 3D games and these big huge publishers who are going to want to save all the money they possibly can. I definitely understand that, but you've got a lot of other smaller publishers with smaller games who are just like, look, it's just about impossible for us to put our games physically on Switch 2 because the cartridge prices are just eating into the profit so much. So anything that makes that a little bit easier on people, that would be good.